Welcome to yet another tutorial from Creating Photoscan 3D Assets course, in which one we're gonna be exploring the techniques for in-studio scanning. And when I'm saying in-studio, what I actually mean within the controlled environment with turntable and some lights. By the end of the tutorial we should have something like this 360 degrees full model of a skull without any gaps and holes. In order to recreate the studio setting, we need some kind of a turntable. The stuff like that can be bought in the art stores. In addition to that, it's recommended to have a few light sources with soft boxes to create an even lighting. And if these conditions are met, we would be able to apply a cool little trick. Basically, we will flip the photoscanned object along the way to get access to previously invisible areas like the bottom of the skull here. The process will look something like that. Without changing the camera angle radically, we'll use the rotating capabilities of turntable to get access to the object from different directions. And then the object is flipped on its side, and we pretend that the camera position changed, even though it's obviously a hack. By doing that, we will trick reality capture into thinking that two separate sets of photos with the object changed its position is in fact one photo set with the camera position changed. I hope it makes sense. This video will be split in two parts. In the first one we will try our luck and just load up every photo from two photo sets all at once in reality capture and pretty much press the processing button. Hopefully it will be enough to trick reality capture into assembling everything into one mesh. Then if it didn't work, the second part of the video will be our plan B, in which we will explore a slightly more complicated technique involving masking in reality capture. Let's start with the easier and generally more enjoyable workflow. Maybe we won't need the plan B after all. So during the capturing session, we created two sets of photos. The first one with the skull being captured in this orientation, and the camera is changing its angle every now and then ever so slightly, but generally doesn't radically change the direction. And the second set is with the object being flipped on its side. And we do the same thing, but with the object being positioned slightly differently. Aside from that, it's just rotating the turntable pretty much. So I'm gonna drag these two folders at once in reality capture. Check the number of images, which should be 183. We can check that indeed we have imported all two folders there. And because it's a simplified version of the workflow, without further delay, I'm heading over to Alignment tab, checking the settings there. The image downscale set to 2, meaning the half of the resolution. What I'll do next is change the detector sensibility from medium, if it was set to its default value, to low. I found out that in order to sell two packs to reality capture as one, it's crucial to set the detector sensibility to low. After that, just press the align images as usual. Let's have a look. What's going on? We got 4 stray cameras that have been put into its own component, which is not super good. And the component 1 is our main thing, nicely rendered. Even though it's a healthy number of cameras being matched, I think we could do better. So I'm gonna delete all the components and start from scratch. Settings, the image downscale factor, I'm bringing it up to 1, meaning no downscale whatsoever aside from the photos downscale that we have done in pre-production. Now in theory the result should be much better, more points to work with. Yeah, indeed, all the cameras have been matched. Perfect. The sweet type points in every image, meaning that the final mesh is doomed to be great. Doomed, if you know what I mean. And quaked as well. Next, I will clear the render region to get the better view of the ground plane that I'm going to adjust right now. We can use the gizmo to carefully change the orientation of the object. And usually it's advisable to do it from the orthographic perspectives, because it's just easier this way. So the top one, now the left, just nudging it ever so slightly, the front perspective, or rather projection, looks fantastic. I'm going back into the perspective mode now and resetting the reconstruction region, like this. It is super satisfying to trick reality capture into meshing it all into one model without any gaps. It is fantastic. Just think about it, we don't have to do anything in post. Everything is done for us. So click on normal detail for the reconstruction to happen. Hopefully it won't reveal any new bugs, because sometimes it's hard to tell just by looking at the sparse point cloud what's really happening there. Here it worked without hitch, which is fantastic, I think. Just a minor glitch over there that can be lassoed out and filtered. So once we selected it, we can press filter selection. It will create a separate model without this part that we have just wiped out. And it is slightly awkward, because our plan A worked. Technically it means that the plan B is no longer necessary, but still I'm gonna record the plan B with using the masking to see how it works, where the situation is slightly more complicated than simply dumping everything into RC and pressing one button, right? So join me in exploring totally unnecessary but still pretty interesting part B with masking. Alright, so what do we do when reality capture actually persists in thinking that the object didn't remain static? What happens when it doesn't want to be cheated? Then the plan B kicks in. It is a slightly longer workflow, still worth exploring. In this case, we need to treat the sets separately, so here goes the first one with 76 photos. Let's align it right away. What we are going to do in just a second is render out a set of black and white mask images to go alongside the source 76 photos. I'm emphasizing the 76 number because it's fairly important for the reasons that will become clear in just a second. For generating the masks, we don't need high resolution. On the contrary, it's practical to be working in a fraction of the resolution, so I'm downscaling everything by the factor of 5, the depth maps I mean, and then reconstructing it all. So we got something like that, and everything except the hero object, which is the skull in this particular case, needs to be filtered out. It can be done by using the lasso tool, as usual. So I'm carefully outlining everything but the skull, and then going filter. That is the mesh that will be used for rendering out the masks. Let's delete the first model that is unfiltered. Unfiltered like a beer. One of my favorite types of beer, by the way. So after having the unfiltered model deleted, I'm following it up by clicking on the depth and mask button, selecting the folder of the source photos. That is important to dump the mask files in there. Then silently agreeing with all the options proposed by RC except the export camera depths, which I'm setting to no. We don't need depths, just masks. And let's see how it gets rendered. After checking the folder with the source material, you will find the masks in there. So far so good, we can move on to the second set. This file is no longer needed, it was just a proxy, so file, new. Where is our folder with the flipped skull? Bring it on. 107 images. Let's note this value somewhere too. And then follow through the steps that we have already explored. First, we match the camera position with pressing the Align Images button, and that creates a sparse point cloud. And then to generate the depth maps under the hood and flesh it out as a model, we press the Normal Detail button within the Mesh model menu. And in just a few seconds, due to the low resolution of the process, it delivers this kind of mesh, which is absolutely fine. We don't care about resolution at this point. We care about masking though, so everything that isn't the skull should be filtered out. There is still this part of the turntable visible, so I'm trying to carefully isolate it with the help of the lasso tool and get rid of it. After inspecting it from different angles really quickly, I think it's ready for extracting the masks, so we can proceed. Mesh model, depth and mask. Select the corresponding folder. OK. Everything at its default values. Press OK once more. And it's worth double checking in the folder if the masks have been generated indeed. And they were... Let the great merge begin. By taking the background out of the equation, or rather masking it out on the source photos, we force reality capture into thinking that all these photos belong to one photo session and the object as if hasn't been moved. You know, everything is relative after all. The camera could have been moved. After loading the first pack of images with the masks, we will notice that the number of images won't change. It still is displayed as 76 images. Then goes the second folder with 100 plus images. And as we can tell, the masks got recognized as layers, so they don't contribute to the final score of the images. And voila! If there was no other option of merging these two photosets together, masking would have done the trick. Well, at least in theory, but it's highly likely. So after seeing the merged point cloud and making sure everything is okay with it, I'm adjusting the ground plane, setting the reconstruction region, checking the mesh generation process settings, and setting the downscale to a higher value, because right now we're not generating the stuff for masking, but rather for the final quality. So cranking it up all the way to 1, which means 3K pixels wide or something like that, considering that the sources have been downscaled ever so slightly. To give it an aesthetic touch, we can colorize it, but first I will rename it Skull Poly. Press the colorize button. It goes too fast to brew a coffee in the process, I guess. And here we go, memento mori, my friend, do computer graphics, that's my motto. What I find really impressive, and I mean it, is that there is no need for adjusting the model in post. Its full 360 degrees representation of the skull doesn't have any gaps that has to be closed. It can be simplified in order to obtain the low poly model like no problem at all. And this in studio technique works great, I think. I'm really happy about it. I'm really happy that we don't have to go through the post-processing in this case. As a quick summary, this style of photo scanning in studio requires us to have some kind of a turntable solution, as well as the lighting that can be set up on stage. The more even it is, the better. Then, to avoid the need of post-processing, it applies a cool little trick. The photoscanned object gets turned on its side in the process of taking photos, and thanks to all things mentioned, it results in a full pseudospherical representation of the object. It works wonders for the medium and small size objects that we can actually carry to our home, and I hope you liked this tutorial from Creating the Photoscan 3D Environment Assets series.